All right. G'day, fellas. So today's going to be a rather long video. We got the Last Epoch patch notes have just dropped, so I'm going to read through them. I will be adding timestamps in the description of the video, so if there's just a specific area you want to look at, or, just flick through them, just go in the description, have a look. Timestamps will be set there. And I guess we're just going to get stuck into it. Make sure you grab a coffee if you're one of the other Giga nerds who are going to stay for the whole video. And we'll have a look what's going to happen. All right, just take a sip of my coffee. There we go. All right. Season 3, Beneath Ancient Skies launch. Okay, we know that. Hello, travelers. Okay, I'm not going to read the fluff in between because there's going to be a lot in here. This is all just launch stuff, true offline mode, blah, blah, blah. All right, we'll just scroll down past all these and we'll start at the top. Oh my gosh, there's so much. Oh, we're in for a long one. All right, new features. Chapter 10. Added Chapter 10 to the campaign following the Battle of Majasa. At the end of Chapter 9, the traveler will hunt down Apophis through the ancient era through lush jungle and places previously only seen in their ruined form. Okay. Added 17 new campaign zones. Added 28 new enemies. Chapter 10 locations as well as other areas. Cool. New enemies. We got like a lava bug and a big horned bug. Cool. Completing Chapter 10 will give your character an additional +1 in all attributes. This stacks with the bonus from completing Act 9. So we get +2 now. Nice little extra bit. Beneath Ancient Skies, the Primal Hunt, the thing we're all looking forward to the most. All right. Campaign zones and monoliths of fate echoes, including quest echoes and arena echoes, now have a chance to spawn either a mysterious rift or a torn rift, which players can use to fight dangerous beasts. Okay, good. Continue with Primal Hunts to eventually earn Primal Uniques and Primordial Exalteds. And there's the Rift. So, yep, it's fighting some dragons. The first time you find a rift, it will be a mysterious rift. When you use the rift, you will be taken back to the ancient era to just outside of the entrance of a new cave side zone. Because these caves are new side zones, they will not find any rifts in echoes that have a tomb or cemetery. At the cave entrance, you will be greeted by Scarven Bloodhorn, the goat man, okay, who will explain what lies inside. Scarven will also act as a vendor you can trade new materials and currency with. Okay, inside the cave you will find a number of different enemies from the ancient era which drop currency called ancient bones instead of gold. At the end of each cave is a rift beast guarding their nest. Okay, and we know that the nest has 3 creatures in it, and we pick which one to let go, and it continues the lineage to make the more powerful beast. Okay, we know about this. Upon defeating the Rift Beast, we actually know all of this. So we are going to breeze past the Rift stuff. Torn Rifts and Advanced Lineage. Once your Rift Beast has been evolved, and if you did not end or complete the lineage, you will now encounter a Torn Rift instead of a Mysterious Rift. Using these rifts will cause you to be ambushed by a Rift Beast from your current lineage. Rift Beast spawns this way will continue to drop the loot associated with their evolution. Okay, so this is a way for you to farm a beast that you've made, by the sounds of it. Once you have defeated between 2 to 4 Rift Beasts from the Torn Rift, your next Rift will be a Mysterious Rift, which will take you back to the ancient era and allow you to once again evolve the Rift Beast. Right, so you evolve the Rift Beast, and then you can go into a Torn Rift to farm that Rift Beast. And then you go and you evolve it again, and then you can farm it again. When you end the lineage, a non-primordial unique named evolution end will drop. When you reach the maximum number of evolutions, the next time you defeat a Rift Beast in a cave, you will only be able to end the current lineage. Primordial materials. There are 5 types of primordial materials that can be gained from killing Rift Beasts. Some materials, like crystallized hearts, can only be obtained from specific activities, like completing a lineage. Players can spend primordial materials and ancient bones to buy a number of items from Scarva, including primordial uniques. You will be able to trade with Scarva at the end of any cave after defeating a Rift Beast in a cave and in a new zone in the ancient era called the Garden in Chapter 10. Oh man, some of these items are so powerful. This bow is off its head. I don't know what this one is. There is a crazy new headpiece and there's a new ward chest piece. Oh man. There are 2 types of primordial items, uniques and exalts. Yep, we know that. This means you cannot have 1 primordial unique and a primordial exalt item equipped at the same time, or 2 primordial exalted items, or 2 primordial uniques. So you can only have 1 primordial. There are a total of 25 primordial uniques. 22 of them can be purchased from Scarvan, and 3 can drop from Rift Beasts. Primordial uniques have incredibly transformative effects, which can range from plus levels of skills. I think the bow has +6 to dexterity skills, which is kind of crazy. Allowing you to summon a T-Rex or increase the effectiveness of your idols. Oh yeah, there's one that will double the effects of your non-unique idols, which sounds insane. Primordial uniques of all kinds can still gain legendary potential and be used in the Eternity Cache. Right, cool. Campaign. Alright. Always drop some cold and lightning resist shards. Items resistant. Okay. This is to ensure the players have tools to improve their survivability against Lagon if they need to. Okay, so this is like a bit of a rework. Rework the Keeper Vault wave fight. Reworked Argent the Ruby Commander. Okay. Nothing really interesting there. Updated Monolith quest progression to be shared for party members. That's pretty cool. As long as you have the stability, you can progress together. Added 3 new woven echoes based around the new Rift base. Rampant Coast. Slay a rampantly evolved Rift Beast with a crystallized heart to unlock the ability to evolve your own Rift Beast lineage beyond the normal limits. Okay, so we can gigabuff our Rift Beasts. Bloodline Glade. Slay a pack of randomly evolved Rift Beasts. Champions to retrieve the primordial exalted items they guard, each of which has a primordial champion affix. Oh, very cool. So primal exalted items that have a champion affix. That's going to be a really nice one to farm. Nesting Grove. Protect the Rift Beast nest to spread Rift Beast encounters to surrounding echoes. Cannot add Rift Beast encounters to arena echoes, woven echoes, or cemeteries of the arrays. Only apply to the first attempt at Necro. So yeah, that's what we know so far. These Rift Beast caves can't spawn on certain maps if they have other side zones. So we will not see a cemetery and a rift cave on the same map. Glyph of Envy has been reworked. It no longer unpredictably changes an item to siphon stability to the timeline. Note that the new Temporal Keystone detail below this can be used to add stability. It now reforges the subtype of an item into another subtype with the same item type and class restrictions when adding or upgrading an affix. So it no longer randomizes it, it just changes the sub item. This is really good. I like this change a lot. I don't really care about the stability change with the new item. So a new item has been introduced named a Temporal Keystone. In the Echo Web UI, there is a button to the bottom right of the stability bar that lists your current number of temporal keystones. If you press one, so every time you press the temporal keystone, it will give you 150 to 210 stability to your timeline. So this is just an item that you're going to probably farm. You're going to get shitloads of it, and then whenever you're playing your alts, you can just giga boost their timelines or whatever. So this is a really cool new item. Harbinger now have a bonus chance to drop temporal keystones instead of Glyphs of Envy, so you can still farm them on the Harbingers. The rank 5 Forgotten Knights bonus now grants additional chances for Harbingers to drop temporal keystones. Big green loot lizards now drop temporal keystones. Alright, so I'm going loot lizard Weaver's Tree. Added 6 new monoliths. Okay. Increased the area level of most pre-90 normal timelines. So 58 to 62, 62 to 60. Okay, so it's just a small increase, I guess, because we're doing an extra campaign. We're going to be a bit stronger. The first Harbinger for the Forgotten Knights quest now always spawns in the first completed level 90 timeline. Previously, it was the last level 90. Okay. Reduce the spawn rate of tombs. This does not affect the spawn rate of cemeteries. Added text that lists the total corruption gained for echo rewards that increase your corruption from more than one source. That's a nice change. Players can no longer take damage from enemies while in echo of a world between monolith echoes. Okay. Right-clicking a quest echo or timeline boss in the top left of the monolith will immediately start it if available. Portaling between monolith echoes in offline should now be smooth as it is online instead of showing a loading screen. Undead hydras can no longer follow the player into tombs using their burrow ability. Well, that's something I never even knew was a thing. Dungeon tier unlocks are now shared between characters that share a stash. In Temporal Sanctum, added an indicator for the first time Juro uses her most powerful attack to remind the player that they can use the Temporal Shift ability. Dungeon boss vote no longer waits on people. Okay. Added a load screen when a portal is used to proceed to the next arena. Classes and skill updates. Here's the big ones, boys. Oh, minions. This is what I'm here for. You now gain 0.8% minion power per character level from 0.6. This means that at level 100, your minions deal 60% more damage and take 60% less damage from 45% for both. Minions now also take 60% less damage from dangerous enemy abilities. So this is a big one. Will help on some of those harder bosses. Made improvements to minion AI so that they behave more intelligently and switch targets less often. Minions can be toggled between Protect and Assassin mode. We know about this already. This is a really good change. Assassin mode will try and lead your character. So when you're running, they'll run ahead of you, trying to get to where you're going. And they will leash longer and, yeah, all the good stuff. Keyboard or mouse, the 2 skill. Okay, WSD, the 3 skill. Control left on the directional pad. Okay. Fixed many common cases of minion snapshotting from items. No more snapshotting. Get wrecked. I don't have to explain how to snapshot to people in my chat anymore. All minions are now more responsive at high movement speed, reducing instances of the minion spinning around and failing to reach its intended destination in a timely fashion. Minions will no longer sometimes run back and forth between a potential target and the summoner. Minions no longer use a movement skill to a target if that would leave them at a range where they would immediately start running back to the player. Minions run in front of the player towards their destination. One on mouse and keyboard, this uses your mouse position. On gamepad and WSD, it picks a position up to 5 meters in front of you. Okay. The node in each class which unlocks access to dual wield now grants 8% more damage taken while dual wielding from 9%, and 20% increased attack and cast speed while dual wielding. Shrine, the Rip Blood Shrine now casts Rip Blood every second from every 0.5 seconds. It's because Rip Blood's super powerful now. Void Knight passive tree, Void Well now has a 4-second cooldown from 3 seconds. A little bit of a nerf. Anomaly, Mark of Rot now increases void damage taken by 30% from 50. So this has been nerfed a bit. Shattered Continuity now also grants a Raising Strike 20% less damage. Battle Standard grants 300% more hit damage from 300% more damage. Judgment Inquisition grants plus 50 mana cost from 40, and now also grants 50% less healing from Consecrated Ground, previously had no effect on healing. Cleansing Light now has a trigger limit of 3 per 10 seconds, previously had no limit. Smite. Penance grants Smite's healing a chance to cleanse if Smite was directly cast from any cast. Okay, so there's a few nerfs through there. Symbol of Hope. Invigorate grants 4% increased healing effectiveness per symbol per point from 6%. Healing Rites grants 30% increased healing effect from 40%. Okay, so small nerfs across the board, but I don't think it'll be too big a deal. Blade Dance passive tree. Spellbreaker grants 1% parry chance per point from 4% frailty chance. Now has a 3-point threshold bonus, granting 25% frailty. Critical Eye now has a 3-point threshold bonus, granting 30% critical strike avoidance. The Crimson Shroud node now grants a chance to gain Crimson Shroud when you directly use a melee or throwing attack. Okay. Blood Dance grants... okay, I'm not really that interested in this. But there it is for you guys. Aerial Assault. Skyward Swoop grants 6% cooldown recovery per point from 10% when your Falcon hits an enemy, and it also triggers a limit of 10 times per second, previously had no limit. So we're seeing some nerfs to these common builds that everyone's been just destroying the game with. Dancing Strikes. So now gain increased cooldown recovery speed and more damage equal to 50% of your total increased melee attack speed. Okay. Each attack in the sequence now has 150% effectiveness of added damage. Was 100% or 120 depending on the attack. So that's a buff for Dancing Strikes. Dive Bomb. Flock of Crows grants a 34% chance per point from 100% to grant a stack of dust. That's a huge nerf. Gaping Wound now has a max of 4 points from 5. Midnight Aviary grants 1% more damage per point. Ground up to 25. Previously had no limit. So they're putting a lot of limits on the infinite sort of infinite attack stuff. Rapid Pursuit grants 3 mana per point from 4 and 8% traversal skill cooldown recovery per point from 12. On hitting at least, so it's another nerf. Focused Hunter grants -2 mana cost per point from 4. We got a little buff. Shadow Falcon created by the On Wings of Shadow are now created when the initial dive bomb lands rather than immediately on use. Falconry Hunter's Spoils now has a trigger limit for the hit effect of 10 times per second. Previously had no limit. Okay, so these are all pretty much nerfs. Cool. Now we're getting into the juice. Now we're getting into the juice. Acolyte. This is where I'm going to be living. All right. Crimson Gluttony has been reworked. It now grants 1% missing health gained as ward per point and 1% of current health drained per second per point. Wait, what? This is like a ward generator in a talent point. So we degen health and we gain ward. Very cool. I think ward builds are coming back this season after I've seen some of the new uniques. We'll see. Veins of Power grant 8% increased bleed duration for you and your minions per point. So that's a buff. That's nice. Soul Aegis grants 4 minion armor pen per level from 3. Ethereal Revenant now has a threshold bonus at 4 points, which grants the Revenant 1% more damage per combined minion skill level. Wow, okay. Putrid Demise now grants 7% poison chance per point instead of 8% chance to poison nearby enemies on kill. Okay. So it's just a straight up chance now instead of on kill. Mania of Mortality now grants 10% chance per point to gain 13 ward on nearby death from 10% chance for 13 ward. It now also grants 10 ward decay threshold per point. That's nice. Lich passive tree. Apocryphy now has a 7-point threshold bonus, which grants 50% of your current mana regeneration as increased armor. Oof. Grasp of Fate grants 10% increased necrotic damage from 12% and 10% increased cold damage per point. Soul Barrier has been replaced with Deadened Nerves, which grants +1 vitality and 4% poison resist per point. Soul Barrier has moved to replace Life Barrier and reworked. When a hit taken leaves you below half health, you gain 1 ward per 1% uncapped poison resistance per point. This effect has a 6-second cooldown. Spirit Lure has been replaced with Spirit Ward, which grants +5 ward per second, 2% physical resistance, and 2% necrotic resistance per point. Serrated Bones has been renamed to Biting Frost and now also grants 7% frostbite chance for you and your minions. Harvest Legion has been replaced with Ethereal Menace, which grants 6% increased melee damage and 1 dexterity point. Reaper now has a 3-point threshold bonus, which grants +2 dodge rating per intelligence and 2% increased dodge rating per vitality. That's really cool. Okay. Added a new node, Scornful Blood, which takes the old position of Hallow Lich. Instead of healing you, Lich drains the health of an enemy within 6 meters every 0.25 seconds. Huh. The aura build is going to be stacking. Hello Lich has been moved to replace Scornful Blood and now grants 2% increased damage per 1% health leech per point, maximum of 3 points for 10% increased damage per 1% leech. Bed of Souls now has a 5-point threshold bonus, which grants 2% increased health regen per vitality. That's pretty nice. This will be nice. I'm wondering if we can sustain Lich form, or like Reaper form, or if it's still infinite scaling. That's the one thing I want to know. Crippling Insight has been renamed to Excoriate, I don't know how to say that, Insight, and grants -1% elemental resistance per point instead of 5% reduced health regen per point. it now has a 5-point threshold bonus, which grants 8% elemental penetration. Volatile Blood has been replaced with Executioner. You can dual wield by equipping an axe or dagger in your offhand, and while dual wielding, you have 20% increased attack and cast speed, but take 8% increased damage. So wait, we're not losing damage, we just take more damage. Interesting. Added a new node, Corrupted Form, on the same column as 3 Plagues. It grants plus 6% more health and 2% of max health gained as endurance threshold per point. It has a 2-point threshold bonus which prevents you from healing current health or ward above 50% of your maximum health, but you always count as on low life, maximum 5 points. That's really cool. I like this a lot. I'll be using that on my Lich. Contagion has been replaced with Spectral Wounds, which grants 2% of hit damage taken from bosses and rares, dealing over 4 seconds and 8 plus 8 health points. Maximum 5 points. Death Guard has been replaced with Essence Devourer. It grants 7% increased damage over time and 1% of damage over time leached as health per point. It has a 5-point bonus which grants 1% more damage over time per 7% current health drain. It no longer requires Deathbringer. Oh, Elixir of Death has been replaced with Instrument of Death. It grants 2% increased movement speed with a dagger, 2% more damage with an axe, and 15% ward per second with a catalyst. I wonder if that stacks. It grants 2% increased movement speed with a dagger. What if I have 2 daggers? Does that give me 4%, or do I just want to be using a dagger and an axe to get both bonuses? I don't know. I'll have to test that out. Symbol of Decay has been replaced with Impact Ward. It grants 4% less damage over time taken per point and has 3-point threshold bonus, which grants all damage over time taken bypasses ward. Maximum of 5 points. Ooh. Decaying Form grants 2% less poison damage taken from 3%. It now has 6-point threshold bonus, which grants 50% of all damage over time taken is taken as poison damage. So you probably use this if you were using the poison aura, or decay, aura of decay. Clairvoyant Insight now has a 3-point threshold bonus, which grants when you critically hit an enemy, you gain 25% of your critical strike multiplier as ward. Wow, that's nice. Wands of the Fallen now grant 10% increased spell damage with no shield equipped. Okay, and now has a 3-point threshold bonus, which grants 13 spell damage with no shield. Alright, alright. Corrosive Consciousness has been replaced with Accursed Feast, which grants 6% of damage leached as health, 66% increased health leached, and 66% increased leech rate, but leech stacks drop off when you reach 66%. Instead of 100, maximum 1 point. Okay, that's interesting. Well, I wonder if you can take this with the other one that makes you stay at low life, because that one makes you stay at 50% health, and then this one will stop healing you once you get to 66% health. But if you can't go above 50% health, then this will be a really nice pickup. Mind Over Body now has a 5-point threshold, which grants 5% of missing health gained as ward per second. Soulmore has been replaced with Reaper's Malice, which grants 2 dexterity, 8% increased critical strike chance, and 4 ward gained on dodge per point, maximum 5 points. Necromancer Passives. Okay. So, my Abomination build. This is exciting. Elixir of Hunger grants +7 health from 5 and 1 intellect, previously 1 second of hunger duration per point. It now has a 6-point threshold, which grants when you use a potion, kill the lowest health minion to restore health equal to 50%. I wouldn't want this. I'll end up killing my Abomination. Grave Thorns grants +1 vitality, 10% minion armor, and +10 minion damage reflected. It now has a 3-point threshold bonus, which grants 2% increased minion armor per intelligence and 4% increased minion health per vitality. This is a consideration. Cursed Blood now has a 5-point threshold bonus, which grants when one of your minions die, enemies within 4 meters are marked for death. This can occur up to 2 times per 3 seconds. This would be good because we will be killing our minions a lot. Blood Armor grants +6 minion health regen per point. Life Drinker has been replaced with Soul Conduit, which grants +2 ward per second per point per minion you have active, up to 20 minions. Okay, so this isn't going to be good for me because I'm only going to have the 1 minion. Maybe a couple extras, I don't know yet. Mortal Tether now also grants +2% endurance per point. Mark of Punishment has been replaced with Towering Death, +5 health, +5 armor, and 50 stun avoidance per point. It has a 5-point threshold bonus, which grants minion stun immunity and 30% reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes for you and your minions. Ooh. This is big. I'm taking this, 100%. Stun immunity for my Abomination is kind of cracked. Dark Retribution has been replaced with Invigorating Dead, +2 minion melee physical damage and 2% increased minion movement speed per point. It has a 3-point threshold bonus, which grants your minions gain 100% of their added melee physical damage as added throwing physical damage. Ooh. Unbound Necromancy is now a 5-point node that grants 8% chance per point for summoned skeletons to resummon. Oh man, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I saw in the trailer that this node had 3 points in it, and this is the get 1 extra skeleton node, but now you need to invest 3 points into this node in order to get the extra skeleton. Wispweaver has been reworked to now grant +7 minion frostbite chance and 20% minion freeze rate multiplier. Unearthed Arms has been replaced with Blood Feast. It grants 1% minion damage leached as health and 5% increased minion health. We'll take this. Thank you very much. Soul Drinker has been replaced with Sharpened Bone to grant 1% minion critical strike chance. We'll be taking that. Maybe. Depends on Dreadshade, as long as that hasn't changed. Effigies have been reworked. It now grants 2% of damage taken redirected to your lowest health minion per point. It has a 3-point threshold bonus, which grants when one of your minions die, your other minions restore health equal to 20% of its current maximum health. This is really interesting because there's another node that's like whenever your Abomination consumes a minion, it gets 10% of its health back. Would this mean if I had this node and my Abomination consumed a minion, would that minion count as being killed as well? So you would get the 10% health on your Abomination plus 20% additional health on the Abomination because it just killed a minion as well. If that's how that works, our Abomination is now immortal forever. Even when you're AFK in town and it's getting burnt to death by Infernal Shade, you just pop a minion out and it will heal him. River of Bone no longer grants increased minion health leech or minion freeze rate multiplier. Moonlight Pyre now also grants 7% minion damned chance on hit and 7% minion ignite chance on hit. Oh, that's nice. Cling to Life grants 4% minion all resistance per point. It also grants 1% all resist per point. That's a nice one. Hearsay has been removed. Blade of Forloin has been moved into its position. Rite of Undeath grants 10% increased minion necrotic and elemental damage per point. It now has a 7-point threshold, which grants 1% penetration per 1% minion penetration per 5% overcap necrotic or elemental penetration. Huh. This is going to be a big one. Empty the Grave gives 4% increased health regen per minion from 2% per point, but both of its effects are now limited to up to 20 minions. Added a new node, Forbidden Techniques, in the old position of Blades of the Forloin. 1 intelligence and 1 vitality per point. It has a 3-point threshold bonus, which grants 1% increased minion critical strike chance per intelligence and 1% more minion damage over time per vitality, maximum of 5 points. Veins of Malice now grant 5% chance per point to gain haste for 2 seconds on minion kill or death, and 1% increased move speed per point. It now has a 3-point threshold bonus, which grants its previous effect of when you cast a spell, sacrifice 5% of your current health to give your minions haste and frenzy. Very cool. Disciples of Necromancy. This is now a 5-point node that grants +2 minion spell damage and 2% increased minion cast speed per point. Its previous effect of 1 maximum skeleton mage is now a 3-point threshold. So this has been buffed and nerfed at the same time. I don't know what to think about it. I was hoping I would get 3 extra skeletal mages, but you know, I'm hoping for too much. Flay added a new skill that requires 30 points in the Lich tree. Flay spirit step up to 3 meters towards an enemy if not within range, then perform a narrow rending slash. Each enemy killed by the melee attack will release a blood eruption, a spell dealing physical damage in an area. Enemies can be hit by both both Flay and all blood eruptions that occur, so it will shotgun. So the explosions we see in that screen up there are multi-hitting. Enemies can be hit by both Flay and blood eruption. Gain 2 melee physical damage per point of dexterity. The melee attack has 200% effectiveness of added melee damage. The blood eruption has 200% effectiveness of added spell damage. Tree nodes, plasma fountain, 8% more blood eruptions damage per point. Every second melee attack with Flay, which hits a boss or rare enemy, has a 34% chance to trigger a blood eruption. 34% chance times 3. So we are looking good. I think if that, 34. Yeah, so it'll be 100% on bosses. So that solves that issue. I was worried that this would be trash on bosses, but this is what you need. 12% more damage per point, 3% less attack speed per point, and -1 mana cost per point. Trepidation Blade, while using a dagger, Flay has 10% more attack speed per point. Thirst of Dread, 15% increased area per point, +5 spell damage per point, double if there is a bleeding enemy within 15 meters. Okay, Flay Bleed build. Blood Rivalry. When you create a Blood Eruption, you gain a stack of Blood Rivalry up to 5. Direct use of Harvest or or Rip Blood can consume a stack of Blood Rivalry to deal more 10% more damage per point and gain 10% increased area. Yeah, so I think Rip Blood and Flay are going to be a really nice mixture. I want to do Rip Blood with Tether for the single target, increased bleed damage, BS that goes on with the blood eruptions from Flay. I think it's going to be very nice. Okay. Spirit Sprite, 20% increased Spirit Step, 12% chance per point to gain haste. When you directly use Flay and hit at least one enemy, there is a chance to triple if Flay is a traversal skill. Spirit Leap, I want to see if there's anything that Flay can trigger. If Flay can trigger Rip Blood or vice versa, that's going to be sick. The Spirit Step now has a maximum distance of 12 meters. Flay is now a traversal skill. 5-second cooldown, no one's going to use that. Transference, hitting a boss or rare enemy with Flay melee attack transfers your active aura of decay to them for 6 seconds. Open wounds, when you directly use Flay and hit at least one enemy with the melee attack, your active aura of decay gains 2% increased radius and 2% more ailment frequency. Oh my goodness. Have we got a Righteous Fire build with Flay? I think we do. Because if you didn't know, Aura of Decay is getting all the elements, I believe. I believe you can change Aura of Decay to Blood, to Frost, to Necrotic. I'm not sure about Fire. I don't think Fire. Maybe Fire? We'll have a look. Bloodsoaked Blade, melee damage of your equipped axe or daggers is also applied as spell damage. Oh. Oh, that's huge. Deadly Plot, Flay and all skills triggered by its skill tree deal 5% more damage. Wait, Flay and all skills triggered by its skill tree? That means it can trigger something. This includes skills which have their own skill trees, such as Chaos Bolt, as long as they're triggered by this tree. Okay, Chaos Rip. Directly using Flay and hitting at least one enemy with a melee attack has a 0.5% chance per point per maximum mana to release a Chaos Bolt towards an enemy. Consume 2 mana per Chaos Bolt, max 2 points. Has a 0.5% chance per point per maximum mana. Okay, so if you had 100 maximum mana, is that a 50% chance? I guess so. So 200 mana, does that equate? That must mean that equates to a 100% chance, right? Let me know in the comments if I'm reading that wrong. I think that's a really big one. Go for the throat. Oh yeah, because can't Chaos Bolt trigger Blood Rip? Oh man, there's going to be some actual nuttiness now that I'm thinking about it. Go for the throat. 2% increased critical chance and 0.5% of damage leached as health per point. Marrow Nora, 15% critical multiplier per point. Critical hits at least one enemy with Flay's melee attack has a 25% chance per point to release marrow shards towards another nearby enemy. Oh, that's cool. Decrease of slaughter, 8% more hit damage per point, doubled against low life enemies, max 4 points. Corrosive slash, Flay inflicts exposed flesh on hit. A Curse, which reduces cold resistance and armor. Interesting. Chance to be frozen. Misfortune. Blood Erupt has 8% increased area and deals 8% more hit damage per point for each of your curses that was on the enemy, max 4 points. Spirit Geyser. Blood Erupt consumes 2 mana to release a Wandering Spirit that can trigger up to 2 times per point for 4 seconds. Gravecrawler, 25% chill chance and 8% more damage per point, max 4 points. Blood Waltz, Blood Eruption spreads all bleeds on the enemy to one other enemy. Oh man. This is alright. Last season was the Reign of the Void Knight. We know what's happening here. It's going to be Reign of the Flay Boy. Doom Whisperer, the Spirit Step is removed, 10% increased attack speed. Exquisite Blood, the melee attack is removed. Flay is now a spell that creates the Blood Eruption. It scales with cast speed instead of melee attack speed. Interesting. Very, very cool. Hemorrhage, 25% bleed chance and 10% increased bleed duration per point, max 3 points. Dismember, 25% bleed chance, 15% more damage over time, and 3% less attack speed per point, maximum of 4 points. Corrupted Blood, bleed chance from all sources is converted to poison. Okay, so we can change it to a poison. I guess this will count and spread the poisons with that other node, so that's cool. Frostbite, base damage is converted to cold. Okay, with an 80 freeze rate, not bad. Chill of the Grave, 10% more hit damage to chilled or frozen enemies per point, plus 10 freeze rate. Per active skeleton or bone golem, maximum of 4 points. Scent of Death, Flay inflicts Mark of Death for 1 second per point. Flay instantly kills enemies below 3% health. Max of 4 points. So 12% culling for Flay. Get that into you. So you get culling baked into the damn skill as well. Soul Ripper, base damage is converted to necrotic. Bleed chance from all sources is converted to damned. That's cool. I think I would do this. I think I want to do a damned build. Prince of Pain, if you directly use Flay and hit at least one enemy but do not hit a boss or rare enemy, a spectral copy of Flay strikes a random nearby boss or rare. Macabre Dance, directly using Flay and hitting at least one enemy reduces the remaining cooldown of Reaper form or Reap by 6% per point. This can occur up to 3 times per use of Reaper form. Interesting. Spectral Nightmare, directly using Flay and hitting at least one enemy has a 10% chance per point to trigger a spectral copy of Flay against a nearby enemy. If one would not be triggered otherwise, spectral copies of Flay have 20% increased area per point. Occult Offering, directly using Flay consumes 9% of your current health and ward. Flay gains +1 melee point per 30 health consumed and 1 spell damage per point per 30 ward consumed. Oh, this is getting really cool. Oh my gosh. We're getting to it. This is my build, the next one. Assemble Abomination. Channel to absorb minions in a moderate area. So we already know how Abomination works. I'll create out of those minions 5% more damage per minion absorbed, up to 20. Once created, the Abomination will devour any minions of the same type that were absorbed, restoring 10% of its health. So this is going back to that other passive I was talking about. Whenever you kill an enemy, you get 20% of your minions' max health back. So with this, Does this mean we'll get 30%? I guess it does. Minions from the same skill are considered the same type of minion. For example, skeleton warriors and skeleton archers are the same type. If your maximum allowed minion changes for a type that was devoured, the abomination will be unsummoned. This updated functionality allows you to choose which minions you will exclude from your army, using them to instead power up your abomination, and abomination no longer decay over time. So we are going to be able to have our abomination with other minions, maybe, depending on other talent points that I need to look into. Abomination subskill changes. The Abomination's basic attack now has a 30 base damage. That's a huge increase. 150% effectiveness from 18 and 100. So that's like a nearly double. And the base radius of 3.5 instead of 1.5. Oh, that's very nice. 2 extra radius, so over double. Soul Reaver's damage and base radius are unchanged, but are now stated on the node. 200% effectiveness and 15% more radius than the new basic attack. Stomp now has a 60 base damage. It's doubled. And 300% effectiveness. So it literally doubled Stomp. Devouring Souls now has 40% base damage and 200% effectiveness from 6 to 100. Oh no. Arrow Nova has been replaced with Eternal Arrow. Oh, I'm so excited for this. People are sleeping on this. I don't know if you guys have seen the video that was just released. Pay attention to the Abomination part and look at that spectral arrow shit that's going on. It's shooting like a machine gun. It casts out, but it recurves. So it's just like bop, 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 bop. So yeah, I think Eternal Arrow is going to be kind of crazy. Double Strike now has 40 base damage and 200% effectiveness for each hit, and a base radius of 3.5. So all some nice buffs so far. All sub skills available to the Abomination now have tooltips within the skill tree provided. Okay. Tree changes. Oh my gosh. Repugnant Presence, the Fractured End have swapped places. Repugnant Presence now grants 15% more health and threat generated per point. Okay. Fractured End now grants 20% damage reflected per point, and your Abomination disassembles into 1 Skeleton Vanguard per point on death. Yep. The Quick and the Dead has been replaced with Terrible Might, which grants 12% more damage per point and 2% reduced attack speed per point. Okay. A Violent End has been replaced with Necro Sage, which grants 5% increased cooldown recovery speed for all of your Abomination's abilities per point. Okay, this is good. And 8% more damage for abilities with cooldowns per point. Okay, this is a must take. Imprisoned Horror has been replaced with Contaminated Dreams, which grants 30% increased cooldown recovery speed for all of the Abomination's abilities. Bro, these two are huge. 5% increased cooldown recovery speed for all Abomination abilities. So this is 20%. Then, which grants 30% increased cooldown recovery speed. So 50% cooldown recovery speed. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Eternal Arrow has a 4-second cooldown. So if we have 50% cooldown recovery speed, that's a 2-second ability. Just with these 2 points. Oh, well, sorry, not 2 points. 5 total points. So worth it. Okay. Fright Feast is now a 3-point node. It still grants 1 soul per skeleton mage absorbed. Not scaling with allocated points, it now also grants 0.5 seconds to the cooldown of devouring souls per point and 10% more damage of devouring souls. Okay. Consume grants 3% of hit damage leached as health from 5% and can have a maximum of 3 points. So this is nerfed, but that's okay. Added a new node off the bloated corpse. Picky Eater. Your abomination will not devour volatile zombies, even if they were used to make it. Okay, this is cool. So we can throw on one of the zombie rings to have a zombie always infinitely summoned, and then take the zombie tree to get culling strike with our zombie. So we have a form of culling. That would be nice. Stitch Flesh has been reworked. It now grants 5% more health per point and 5% of maximum health restored on Devour. Max 4 points. What? It also grants 5% more health per point and 5% of maximum health restored on Devour. So that's another 20% health. So we now, when he devours something, he gets half his health back. If all these are working together. That can't be right. Right? Like, there's no way I summon a skeletal archer and then he eats it and gets 50% health back. Just immediately. If so, he's never dying. Cadaver Carapace has been reworked. Your abomination gains 10% more maximum health every 8 seconds each time it devours a minion, up to 5 times per 8 seconds. We might need to go with Skeletal Mage Teleport or Blood Transfusion, leave a minion behind, just so he can keep eating those minions. Added a new node of the Stitch Flesh Destruction engine. Whenever your abomination would devour a minion, you instead sacrifice that minion, consuming 120% of sacrificed mana cost per 1 point. Hulking Mass has been replaced with Sharpened Bone. For each skeleton rogue absorbed, your abomination gains 2% increased attack speed per point. For each skeleton warrior absorbed, your abomination gains 1% more melee damage and 1% more health per point. For each skeleton archer absorbed, your abomination gains 3% increased area per point. Okay, we're going for the area, I believe. So we will be absorbing archers because we also want the arrow ability. Deadeye has been reworked. If a skeleton archer is absorbed, your abomination casts Eternal Arrow with a 4-second cooldown. A bow ability with a 100% chance to recurve. Your abomination also gains +1 bow damage per intelligence, max 1 point. So stack intelligence, get all that minion cooldown ability, get this down to 2 seconds. We're going to have a recurving arrow shot out before the last one is gone, because they're going to recurve for longer than 2 seconds. So we will have constant projectiles, I believe. Horrific Volley has been reworked. Eternal Arrow has 0.25 seconds of cooldown per point. And for 0.5 seconds of cooldown per point, so we can get rid of 1 second off the cooldown. So now we're down to 1 second. 25% recurve chance per point as well. So, okay. We are... Okay, this arrow is going to work. Spoil of War now has... now also grants double strike, 20% more damage per skeleton warrior or skeleton rogue absorbed. Unholy Command has been replaced with Cruel Monstrosity plus 2% critical strike chance per point and 1% increased movement speed per skeletal rogue. Age of Undeath has been replaced with Commanding Presence. Cannot absorb summon skeleton minions within 12 meters of your abomination. Gain 10% increased attack speed. Okay, that's really cool. Engorgement has been reworked. 5% more damage and health per point per type of minion consumed. Summon Skeleton, Mage, Wraith, Bone Golem, 5 points. Okay. Epicurean has been removed. Death in the Family has been reworked. If the Abomination was made using at least one of every minion type mentioned by engorgement, it gains 20% more damage and 20% increased attack speed and movement speed per point. Max 3 points, so we want this. Meat Grinder has been reworked. Your Abomination gains 5% increased attack speed for 5 seconds on kill, up to 20 times per 5 seconds. Each stack falls off separately. Oh my god, there's too many good points, guys. There's too many. Rasmus Protection has been replaced with Tower of Bones. Stomp has 0.5 seconds of cooldown per point for each golem absorbed. Stomp deals 40% more damage and 30% increased. Okay, so this plus all the other cooldown. Oh, we're looking at massive cooldown reduction on Stomp too, especially if we use the Aaron's Will chess piece and absorb all 4 golems. If we can get 4 golems, oh man, it's going to be insane. Added a new node off of Repugnant Mass, Noxious Stench, and Abomination casts. Your Abomination casts Aura of Rot, inflicting poison to itself and nearby enemies every second. Influenced by its chance to poison on hit, 20% chance to poison on hit per skeleton rogue. So this used to be kind of bad because the Abomination, like, there was a point similar to it. I think it was in Dreadshade maybe. But it would just infinitely poison itself until it died. But I think with the new healing, it's not going to matter. All right, Aura of Decay. We're going to just glance over this. A chance to poison on hit, applies Aura of Decay. While Aura of Decay is active, you have 30% less poison damage from all sources. You now also take 50% less damage from your own Aura of Decay. Aura of Decay now updates after stat changes. Removed. Okay, yep, can't snapshot it. Undertow grants 25% slow. Corrosive Aura has been reworked, 25% armor shred chance. Armor Bane has been replaced with Blood Font. Converts Aura of Decay into physical, inflicting bleed instead of poison. Sleeping Wounds has been removed. And Unending Sickness has been moved to its place. Mana Blight grants 12% increased ailment frequency. Icarian Poison has been replaced with Cold Death, converting Aura of Decay to cold, inflicting frostbite, blah, blah, blah. Added a new node in Poison, Frost Touch, okay. Aura of Terror has been removed, and Chill to the Bone has been moved to its position. Plague Rat now grants 25% increased area per point. Bubonic Aura grants 20% chance to inflict plague per point. Ooh. Ooh. Plague? Plague Aura? Ooh, we know how much we like plague. Corruption's Poison Nova now has a limit of 2 per 3 seconds. Death Bloom now grants 1 limit per 3 seconds. Putrid Bomb has been reworked. While Aura of Decay is active, you leave behind a Putrid Bomb. Okay, yeah, this is like a... not something that interests me. Insipid Decay has been reworked. Aura of Decay consumes 10 mana to emit a Defiling Nova every 15 seconds. So this is like Poison Nova D2. Poison Skin has been moved. Poison Bolt, Poison Barrage, Loathing Feast of Souls, and Growing Hunger have been removed. Added a new node in Loathing Position. Okay. Cool. Death Seal. Move to require 35 points in the Lich tree. Seal your current health, preventing it from going above its current value for up to 3 seconds. While sealed, you take less damage, equal to half your percent missing health, and 90% of hit damage taken is dealt over 4 seconds, can be deactivated early, no longer removes ward, and does not prevent gaining ward. That's big. The Wave of Death has 100 base damage and 500 effectiveness. That's a big buff. Now has a 10-second cooldown. Tree changes. Necrosis has been replaced with Glimpse of Pain when you kill a sealed enemy. Okay. Alright. Anything else that's going to really stick out here? Let's just have a quick glance through, because the video is getting massive. Okay, Dreadshade. No. Alright, let's go up to the top quickly, go to the categories and see what other things we actually want to look at. I wouldn't mind seeing the Primalist skills. Mainly the Summon Scorpion. Why is that not getting me there? Come on. Right. So just have a quick browse through here. Stash, fix some bugs. Loot filter. They added in a bunch more loot filter options. We can now disable beams and things like that from items. Fix some enemies. Factions, arena, dungeon. Yep. More monolith fixes. Campaign. Okay, just a bunch of bug fixes. All right. Well, I think we can say that that was a pretty massive change to the game. I'm gonna have to go through more in depth, maybe in a later video once I start making some builds. There's just so many notes in this patch notes. But we went through a lot of the stuff I wanted to see, especially to do with the Necromancer and the Lich changes. I'm not going to deep dive into the Primalist and all of that this video. I will be making some build guides coming up here very shortly. They will all be posted in my Discord. So go to the description, join the Discord if you want to see any of my starter builds that I will be creating. We should have some absolute bangers for launch. Until then, boys, just like, subscribe, comment what you guys are going to be playing. You know, give me some ideas if you got any cool build ideas that I might not be seeing. And I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.